What is going on, fitness coaches? Welcome to another episode of the Change Lives, Make Money on the Internet podcast. It's your boy, Brian Markin. In today's episode, I'm joined by my client, the one and only Mr. Jay Jackson. What's up, G?
What's happening, bro? Hey, man, glad to be here.
Thank you, brother. I'm happy to have you here. So listen, let's take this back because obviously you're popping right now. Jay Jackson on all social media platforms is doing well. 100,000 followers on Instagram at this point, and business is doing $15,000 to $20,000 a month. Talk to me a little bit about your journey getting started in the personal training space. Did you know you always wanted to be an online trainer, or was that something that kind of like you decided later on?
Man, that's a really good question. I didn't know. I didn't know I wanted to be an online coach. I started off as like man, if I'm going back, when I first got my first check as an in-person trainer, it was like $70. And the guy who was kind of like my business partner at the time, he was also kind of like coaching me. I asked him, is this real? Is this legal? Because it was a $70 check. And I had come from training people at LA Fitness for $6 a session. And
Mm,
so $6 a session to making $70 for 2 sessions a week, that was amazing to me. And so my whole goal was to get to the point where I was making a good 5, 6 grand in person. And I did that for about 10, 11 years. I got to the point where I was making pretty decent money as an in-person trainer. And I got to the point where I was like, man, I only have so many hours in a day. I got tired of waking up at 4:30 in the morning, training people at 5 a.m. and sitting in my car in between sessions, getting McDonald's and different food like that, something quick, because I wasn't making a ton of money. It was just a struggle, man. Like trying to
mm,
figure out what my next client was gonna come from if one of my clients fell off. And I was like, man, if I'm gonna have kids and be able to put myself in a position where I can take care of my family, I got to figure out a different way to leverage my time
mm.
and be able to help more people. And so I invested in a couple of different business coaches and just trying to get the gym thing going. And I started, testing out Facebook ads, and it started working for me. I got to the point where the business in person did like 15, 20 grand. And I was like, man, this is great. I got to hire some trainers. But then the trainers started training clients behind my back. Clients would be falling off, and it was just like, it was a shit show. And so I just found myself saying, I don't want to go this route. I'm glad I tried it. Let me see what this online thing is like. And then I just went down this rabbit hole of investing in different business coaches. And one trainer would have challenges, another trainer would have the webinars and all these different things. And I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? Because I'm burning money. I'm spending money, 5 grand here, 10 grand there, 8 grand here. And I just found myself trying to figure out how to do the whole online thing. But
Mm.
I don't want to keep rambling. But that's kind of
Very
like how
good.
I stepped into the whole online space.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate you
Mhm.
for sharing. Thank you so much. So the in-person stuff, it was lucrative, but like how many hours were you working a week when you were doing in person?
Oh man, it seemed like every hour of the day I was working
Yeah.
because either I'll wake up at 4:30. I'll start training at 5, sometimes 4:45 a.m. And in between sessions, I'm basically just sitting in the car,
Mm,
with my next client. And sometimes that'd be like an hour at a time, 2 hours at a time, because I'm pretty sure a lot of trainers are aware you might not want to drive back home, after you get done with a session if you know you got to be back at the gym within an hour
mhm.
or 2 hours. And so it just stretched out my entire day. So I was on all day pretty much.
Crazy. So you got
Yeah.
into online coaching, I believe, when you first started. Were we your first business coaches that you hired for online specifically?
No, it wasn't. Man, I've done probably at this point 7, 8 different coaches. I know sometimes I used to say that, well, and now you even said it earlier, like burning money, but the way I look at it, I just learned what not to do with all those other coaches. There were some things I did learn from different coaches, but I will say this. There was a point in time about 2 years ago where I was almost ready to give it all up
Mm,
because I think we all have different social pressures.
mhm.
I was maybe like 31, some 32 years old, somewhere up in there. And my dad was like, listen, you know, at some point, man, you gotta start making some serious money. 'Cause if
Mhm.
you have a family, like you gotta be stable. You know what I'm saying? I was like, okay. And he was telling me about trucking and building a business with trucking and all that kind of stuff. And one of my buddies told me about this other business coach. Just come to the event, and I just went to the event really just to hang out with him. And I had gotten to a place where I had tried so many different things as an online coach, like trying to make it work to where I could step away from in-person training. And I just got to a point where I just kind of like lost faith. I
Yeah.
didn't believe that it was possible to make six figures anymore just because I wasn't doing it. I'm like, maybe, everybody else can do it, but I just can't, and if I'm being just transparent, I was like, I don't really see too many Black online fitness coaches successful out here.
Yeah.
That was my thought process at that time. That was my limiting belief. And I went to that event to see my buddy, and I seen people, of all races, six figures, some even seven figures. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a dumbass.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in the house too much, just thinking up the worst. And so I invested in that program, and that kind of like was the first time I had ever hit 10K
Yeah.
as an online coach. And I started hitting other bottlenecks, which were in the DMs, communicating with people. And I noticed that coach didn't really understand it at a deep level. That's when I started back listening to your podcast, because I had listened to it prior, but I wasn't ready for it. I
Yeah.
wasn't ready to receive the message. But I was just binging your podcast, man. I listen to everything. And so don't stop doing the podcast, because it's definitely a moneymaker for you. But then I heard you talking about DMs, and I'm like, oh, that's my man. And so I joined CLA, and once I joined CLA, the rest was history, man.
So we've
Yeah.
done, not only have we stayed over $10,000 a month, but like on average, what would you say you're making monthly revenue wise right now?
Average anywhere between like 14 to 16.
Average 14 to $16,000 a month, which when you multiply by that by the year, it's like $200,000 a year. So like based off of that number, the 200K a year, like what do you think do you think you've kind of defined like a stable income at this point?
Oh, absolutely. It's so stable. I will say this, because I'm in the $1 Million Mastermind. When you're around sprinters, it's like you start to, I'm grateful for where I'm at, but I'm like, man, I'm a little fish right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I'm grateful. And just looking at where I am right now, it's like a blessing, man. Like last year, 2023 August, I bought my dream car. Once I invested in the $1 Million Mastermind, and I knew how to do DMs, like just having that confidence in how y'all teach it, you, Janelle, and the other coaches, I was like, man, I got it. And that's when I stepped away from doing in-person training. Like some people would think that's crazy, but I just had that level of confidence in myself and in the process, and seeing so many of the members who you guys have helped. And this is it. Hired VAs to do the DMs for me. I learned it so well, and bought the car, and now getting Invisalign, straightening up my teeth, man. It's been a blessing.
Let's talk DMs. Let's give some value to the podcast. What do you think? What did you learn about DMs in my program that you weren't getting in other places?
I would say how to have effective communication. And when I say effective communication, it's easy to get a template and just ask the question. But going even deeper on it is just like, how do you communicate with people in person? Do you just ask question after question, or do you, validate what they're saying? Like, hey, man, you can totally understand that can be frustrating if they're having a hard time, validating what they're saying, and then maybe asking the question, and just understanding how to communicate with people, even if you're not in person with them, even though it's like just text message, on the Instagram DMs.
And so like that skill was something you developed inside of the coaching program.
Oh, no question. Absolutely. Yeah. All the other coaching programs, they had templates, but they didn't teach it in detail how to do it.
So it's basically follow the script, and if the script doesn't work, then too bad.
Yeah. It's like it's something you're doing wrong, but they weren't identifying, hey, here's where you're going wrong at in your DMs. Y'all were so hands-on, yourself and Janelle. I was like, taking screenshots, and I would send it to Janelle, and she's like, dude, you've been a robot. Like, you've been an asshole. You just go right to the next question. You didn't even address what they just said. And I'm like, oh, damn.
Yeah, I think that like the important thing to note here, you guys, is unfortunately in this industry, there's a lot of pretenders.
Yeah.
And when I say pretenders, what I really mean is like a lot of people just copy and paste what they learn from their business coach, and they pass it on to the next person. And it's funny because like I even have had personal trainers come through PT Domination that start business coaching, and I'm like, you're literally just regurgitating the information that I told you without actually understanding the concept. And it's like, that's the difference between like an amateur and a pro. Like, don't get me wrong, I've definitely learned from other mentors, but because I'm actually practicing what I'm preaching, I'm able to give Jay and all my other students actual iterations on how to use that in their own coaching business. And that comes from like a deeper level understanding. And I think the easiest way to identify somebody that actually understands versus somebody that doesn't understand is, can they explain complex problems in a very simple way? Because we have, so a lot of in-depth conversations. We got combos would be coming up in an hour. There's a lot of like very complex concepts that we end up simplifying into very simple conversations because that's how it fucking works. So talk to me a little bit about having a couple of VAs, because I know that some people listening to the podcast might be interested in hiring virtual assistants. How has that benefited you, having somebody else doing the DMs for you?
Man, it's such a big time saver, man. And even just mental bandwidth on a daily basis. Like I'm at a point now where I'm bottlenecking my business because I need to hire more. And eventually it can zap your mental energy and your creative energy if you don't have enough staff to be able to help you. But just going back to what we were talking about just prior was just understanding things on a deep level. Because when you hire staff and you hire VAs, that's what made me really rock with you guys. Because I was like, man, Brian knows his shit. He knows it on a deep level. And not even just me asking certain questions on the calls, but I would hear other members in the $1 Million Mastermind ask questions. And the way you would answer it, I'm like, he's been through all this. There's no way you can know how to deliver that answer without going through it and like analyzing it. And so I say all that to say, I've had to do the same thing with my staff and my VAs. It's like there's no shortcuts. You have to know this shit to be able to lead your staff and your VAs to where they can be confident with going out and whether it's doing the DMs or doing the coaching inside the coaching app for you. It just made me step up and be a better leader and just know everything.
Yeah. I think that like that's a big mistake that people make when they're hiring people, is they don't have a thorough understanding of the role they're hiring for. And so you get somebody else and you're like, I'm going to get a VA that'll book calls for me. And it's like, homie, you're not even booking calls yourself. What are you fucking talking about? And so you're just going to plug a stranger into your DMs and hope that they're going to magically make calls appear when you can't make calls appear on your own calendar. Doesn't make any sense. Whereas I think that once you establish business systems and you're able to consistently book 3 to 5 to 7 calls a week, then you start hiring people to help you with those calls. Now it gives you the ability to focus on the marketing. When you can focus only on the marketing and you can plan, masterclasses, 4-day challenges, 14-day challenges, magnetic giveaways, now all your VAs will have new conversations to rock with, and they know how to book calls because you taught them. And like, that's how you scale a business. And then you get to a place like Jay's at right now, where the bottleneck is that we don't have enough people on the team to be able to facilitate the growth, which is part of the process. It's like new levels bring new devils. So talk to me a little bit, Jay. Like, I want to speak to the online fitness coach that is listening to this podcast, that's just getting started, that might be around 5 to 7 to 10K a month, that wants to scale, that wants to grow, that wants to hit the next level, but they're unsure of like how to get there. If somebody is watching this or listening to this and getting inspired by you, and maybe they're at 1 to 2 to 3K a month, what would you say to them?
That's a good question. I would say it comes down to two things. Something that worked for me is stop trying to reinvent the wheel. Look at the people who are sprinting right now. Like, there's certain people inside our $1 Million Mastermind. I'm like, I resonate with how they do content. I resonate with how they go about doing things in their business. What are they doing? How are they showing up on a daily and weekly basis? And I just started running those plays, running those habits. And even yourself, I look at how you post your content. How consistent are you? How authentic are you with your content? And, I got to thank you and Cole, because it made me be more authentic when I seen how authentic y'all were showing up. And so I think a lot of people always think about the what's the hack, or is it the webinar? Is it the challenge? It's the person who they are. And so you have to become a better you. And so that's looking at the success traits of people that you admire, that helped me, because I seen you posting 2 times a day, 3 times a day now. I'm like, I need to be posting 2 times a day. And so I started doing that. I see you sharing your stories and going deep and being authentic with your content. And I'm like, I even doing the same thing, And so seeing you had a podcast, and I'm like, I joined because I was listening to his podcast. I need to have a podcast. I started a podcast. Now I got like over 170 something podcasts. And so I'm just looking at like, what are the successful people doing? And if I truly want that type of success, I'm a dumbass if I think I'm going to get that type of success and I'm not doing the same type of habits and routines that they have. That's the first thing. But the second thing is standards. I think when you have a high standard for yourself, for me, you start to get pissed off when your life, your reality is not what your standards for yourself are. I would look at myself as a 6-figure, 7-figure coach, but I had $2,000 coach habits. And because of that, I was driving in a car that when I would pull up to my family gatherings or pull up to the gym, and I'm like, damn, man, I'm riding around this little bootleg car, man. But that's just that's the standard I had for myself to driving a really nice car. And I felt some kind of way driving up in the car I had, and I'm like, it just ate me up on the inside because I thrive off of wanting to empower people just by them seeing how I move. I listen to Michael Jordan interviews a lot. And one of the things he's like, man, I have a love for the game. I'm obsessed about the game, but I also do this to be a good example for the people who are watching me. So for me, looking the part, having the car, having the crib, the nice crib, whatever it is, the body, you know what I'm saying? Empowering people. I want to go through life and empower people to see, man, this is possible. I'm just like you, man. I just went out and just did it. I stopped all this thinking and overthinking and overanalyze. Just do the shit. If it resonates with you, do it. And that's what I would say.
Yeah. I want to take a second to give you your flowers, bro, because you've been fucking grinding last year and a half, 2 years. You started the podcast, you did the Instagram, you hired the team, you're doing all the things, you got the car, you look the part, like you're doing the thing. I just want to take a second to give you your flowers. You're fucking killing it, bro. I'm proud of you.
I appreciate that.
Proud of you. You're a fucking G.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it. And yourself, man. I know I've given you your flowers plenty of times on the $1 Million Mastermind calls, but dude, man, I've invested in so many business coaches. I got to a point where I'm just about to lock in with one person and just focused. Warren Buffett always talks about like being able to be successful, number one trait, focus, And so I was just like, I'm about to do what he's doing, and obviously what he's doing has gotten him to where he is right now, having thousands of coaching clients and, coaches that work with you as well. And so I'm like, man, let me just run the plays that he's running because it's a master class. Just people don't even realize this, just looking at people like yourself. Dude, you can get so much just looking and analyzing, just watching what you're doing. So that's what I do.
Appreciate you, bro. I appreciate it. Okay, Jay, my podcast audience, where do they find you? Give them your podcast and your Instagram.
Instagram at Jay Jackson Official. Podcast, Lose the Big Ass Stomach Podcast.
Lose the Big Ass Stomach Podcast. That's the best fucking name I've heard all day. Jay, I appreciate you so much, bro. Thank you for coming on today. And guys, if you're listening to this podcast, you want to get results like Jay, send me a DM on Instagram that says 10K and let's have a conversation. Deuces. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Hopefully you got some value. If you did, and you want to learn more about how me and my team can help you scale your online fitness business to $10,000 a month, DM me 10K on Instagram at TheRealBrianMark for more information, and I'll reach out to you to see if I can help you grow an online coaching business.